I've been hard at work forging a brand new Modern deck using one of my favorite cards of all time, Purphoros, God of the Forge.
Oh my god.
If you've been living under a rock, Purphoros is a 4-mana creature that deals 2 damage to an opponent every time a creature enters play under your control. So the more creatures you have entered the battlefield, the more fun Purphoros is. And since we're on the topic of fun, they have recruited the help of new resident fun guy, the Mycotyrant, a 3-mana creature that can help make a ton of shrooms every turn, as long as we put permanents into the graveyard, which shouldn't be too hard with the help of... And I know this video might be in poor taste, but I promise it'll grow on you. I just want to Purphoros some people. Is that too much to ask? Let's get into it. Opening 7 has Purphoros, obviously a keep. Opponent starts with a Flooded Strand, passes the turn back. We draw into a Verdant Catacombs, which is good. Lets us cast out our 3 drops. Let's start with our Bloodstained Mire and fetch. Get ourselves a Blood Crypt, shock that in, cast out the monkey. We'll send it back the other way. Opponent fetches end of turn. Triumph tapped. Follow up with a Breeding Pool, and they have a Kavu. They have 4 colors. Drawn to a Supplier. Nice to have a 2-drop here. We'll start there, just in case we hit a Bloodghast. We don't want to play our land out first. And what do you know? We hit a Bloodghast. Play out a Verdant. Trigger. Bloodghast back into play. Wouldn't want the Kavu eating it now. No attacks, we'll pass back. Basic Plains into a General Ferris. Yikes. That guy's scary. No attacks with the Kavu. And a turn we're going to fetch. Look at his Stomping Ground tapped. Untap. Draw, we find a Bowmaster. Unfortunately, the Bowmaster can't kill General Ferris, but Grist can. So I think that's what we're going to be doing here. Play out the Grist. We'll minus. Sacrifice the Supplier. Target the General. Bunch of lands to the graveyard. We'll just pass turn back. Flooded Strand from our opponent. Fetch. Sacred Foundry shock. They pay 4 mana for a Bloodbraid Elf, which means our Grist is going to die. They get themselves a Beanstalk. Combat. Swing both at Grist. Trigger. Discard a land. And we're going to let Grist go here. It's been real Grist. Back to us. Draw a land, which we like. So I think we're going to start with combat and an attack. Opponent takes 4. Ragman triggers. Ooh. Found it to Teferi. Unfortunately, can't cast it. That would have been nice. Play out our Wooded Foothills. We'll fetch. Basic Mountain and a Fable. Trigger the Fable. Send it back the other way. Opponent attacks for 3. I think we're just going to take that. We're down 12. And while I could have flashed in my Bowmaster to kill their attacking elf, that's not the move when you have a Purphoros entering play next turn. Shardless and 2 more Kavu enter the battlefield, and now it's on. They're not going to know what hit them. Alright, we're going to start with combat. We're going to swing with the Bloodghast. I was actually supposed to swing with the Goblin Shaman as well. That was a mistake. I could have won this turn. Okay, hopefully that doesn't kill me. Opponent chump blocks. You're not going to see this one coming. I will play out a Purphoros. Land. Trigger the Bloodghast. Back into play. Trigger Purphoros. They're down to 6. They untap. 4 mana for a Scion. We're going to respond to that. We're getting a Swamp. Bowmaster. Trigger. Purphoros. Trigger the Bowmaster. Hit them down to 4. Bowmaster triggers. Going to trigger Purphoros again. Hit them down to 1. They draw off the Beanstalk. It's going to trigger Bowmaster again. And that will be lethal, my friends. We're up a game. Kind of want to bring in my whole sideboard. We're going to board in 2 Haywire Might, Ancient Grudge, 3 Fulminator, 2 Pushes, and an EE, pulling Unearth, Mycotyrant, Wayfinder, Supplier, and 4 Bloodghast. 7 looks good, we'll keep it. Game 2 wound up being a closely contested back and forth affair where the Mycotyrant will make its first appearance. The early turns of the game, 2 Kavu hit the board and I'm on damage control with Bowmaster to chump block and preserve life. I play out my Fable with the intention of setting up a very explosive next turn involving the new legendary Mushroom. Drawn to a Supplier, we're going to use Fable's ability to get rid of the Wayfinder and find another land. We'll play out the Bloodstained Mire. We're going to fetch, get a basic, play Stitcher Supplier, 3 cards to the graveyard, and a Mycotyrant, and we'll yield through the turn. No attacks. We're going to get 5 fungus. 4 fungi, I lied. When it starts off with a binding, they draw a card, hit our fungi. It's rude. Combat, they swing for 8. Exile the Tyrant from my graveyard. We'll block 1 with the Supplier. Supplier triggers, come back our way. Drawn to a Bowmaster, which isn't terrible. Flip the Fable, play a land, move to combat, swing for 4. Opponent blocks 1. I should have attacked with the Goblin Shaman, that was a mistake. We'll Bowmaster, hit the Shardless, and play out a Bombardment. Bombardment is also a card that synergizes really nicely with the Mycotyrant, as you can sacrifice permanents the turn the fungus comes into play to make more tokens, and then you can use those tokens as fodder to mow down the opponent's board or chuck them straight to face. In this situation, we opt to kill their creatures after a Fury is evoked and a lowly Fable token is left after the dust settles. Unfortunately, with Beanstalk in play, they have too much fuel and are able to retool with a Scion, a Fury, another Scion, a Shardless, and a Kavu over the next 2 turns, which is way too much for us to handle at this point. We scoop it up and prepare to rally the troops for Game 3, which is exactly what they did in one of those games where a turn 1 Ragman does the heavy lifting and goes coast to coast. An uncontested attack from the monkey on turn 2 steals us a Kavu of our own, and we become the Zoo deck. We discard a Grist using the Kavu's ability, unearth it, and then flash in a Bowmaster for good measure during their end step. Our army was way too much for them to handle without a Fury, and they were dead by turn 4. We're 1-0, let's move on to round 2. Round 2, we'll take the play. 7's a little slow, but we're on the play, and we've got the combo. Purphoros, Mycotyrant, Bombardment. Let's keep it. There's too much fun upside with this hand to ship it. Opponent leads out on Swamp. Womp. They're probably very confused right now. And if they take the Bombardment, we're not going to fetch. If they leave the Bombardment, we will fetch. They opt for the Mycotyrant. So we will fetch. We're going to get Blood Crypt, drawn to a Wooded Foothills, play out the castle, 2 mana for a Bombardment. Hope they don't play a Dauthi. Okay, no Dauthi. Saga, Pithing Needle. They're going to name Bombardment, I would imagine. Oh, Bloodstained Mire, sure. And a Nihil Spellbomb. Yeah, that's pretty good. We'll hold that for next turn. We'll play out Wooded Foothills fetch, get ourselves a Forest, and we're going to lean on the Fable. And next turn we'll have a big Mycotyrant, or maybe even a Purphoros. Fable up to 2. Sheoldred's Edict, make a sacrifice creature, and they're missing their land drop, yikes. Draw an Overgrown Tomb. I think we're just getting rid of the Bloodstained Mire. We draw another one, pretty funny. Play out the Overgrown Tomb, shock it in, and we're going to get this Purphoros out. I suppose they could get a Haywire Might here. We'll see what they opt for off the Saga. Add a mana, and they get the Rack. Okay, I see what you're doing over there. 3 mana and a Dauthi. Okay, Dauthi's going to shut down the Mycotyrant, so we're going to have to get rid of that one. Rack's going to trigger. Fable's going to flip. That's a good one. Purphoros going to trigger. Put our opponent down to 16. Of note, they used Pithing Needle on our Bloodstained Mire, and then they played out an Urborg. We're going to play out this Grist. We're going to plus Grist. Exile a Ragavan, and we're going to sack the Insect, get rid of the Dauthi, sack the Reflection, get rid of the Dauthi. Back their way, we're going to hold on to this Bloodstained Mire. Opponent with a Spell Bomb, activate it, exile our Graveyard. They'll draw a card. Play out another Saga, back our way. Rack deals us 1, draw a Blood Crypt, we're going to hold on to that. Uptick Grist, Supplier into the Graveyard, and they cling to dust the Supplier, sure. 3 mana, play out a Mycotyrant, trigger Purphoros, end of turn Tyrant triggers, make a 1/1, trigger Purphoros. Opponent scoops, alright. The imminent threat is too much. We're up a game. Okay, we're going to board down on Satyr Wayfinders, Bloodghast, Unearth, and a Mycotyrant. We're going to bring in Ancient Grudge, Haywire Might, Fatal Push, and Explosives. Game 2 was relatively uneventful, so we're going to save some time and skip ahead to Game 3 in just a moment. Our opponent had the nut draw with a turn 1 Scammed Grief, followed up by a turn 2 Dauthi Voidwalker, and a turn 3 Rack. We were able to start to stabilize the board on turn 4, but just wound up dying to the Rack. Let's go to the next game. Alright, we'll take the play. With the exception of double Bombardment, this hand looks excellent. We'll keep it. Opponent's on a mulligan to 6. Start the fetch. Gonna get our Stomping Ground. Shock it in. Cast our Ragadude. Pass turn. Basic Swamp from our opponent. And they're griefing us. Discard Malakir Rebirth. Feel like they either need to go for our creatures or our bombardments. Not dead after all. Grief is back. Hit our Haywire Might. Alright, untap. Draw a Wayfinder. Start with an attack for 2. Opponent's down to 18. Trigger Ragavan. We find an Inquisition. I think we're going to use that. Swamp, Inquisition. We see a Thoughtseize and an Edict. We'll take the Edict and 2 mana, play on our Wayfinder. Ancient Grudge to the Graveyard, we'll take a Foothills. That was like drawing 2 cards. Opponent leads on Swamp into a Thoughtseize, take one of our bombardments, accomplishes nothing. Now they can't really attack. Draw into a Bloodstained Mire, play out the Foothills and the bombardment, and we're in a holding pattern here, which persisted until we top decked a Fatal Push to kill their grief. From there, both of us drew nothing but lands, with the only action being the dynamic duo of Ragvan and Satyr Wayfinder attacking turn after turn. The excitement was finally disrupted when a Liliana was top decked, with my opponent at 4 life. Makes me sacrifice a creature. We'll sacrifice the Wayfinder. We find another land. This is crazy. We only play 20 in the deck, We'll attack at them. All right, we find a Voidwalker. That's going to be lethal. Cast it, bombardment them for 1, and they scoop it up. All right, round 3, we are 2-0. This opening 7 has some pretty clear issues. We're going to mulligan. All right, and 6 looks great. We'll keep this. Put him with a Copperline Gorge into an Ancient Stirring. So this is going to be Hardened Scales. And they find an Urza Saga. Ragavan, not the greatest in this matchup. We're going to start with a fetch. And I think I'm just going to go basic mountain here into our Ragavan. We'll pass it back. There's the Saga we knew about. Into a Hangerback Walker. Brick Wall for our Ragavan. Drawn to a Grist. Bloodstained Mire. I'm going to fetch. Get an Overgrown Tomb. We'll shock that in. And we're going to get rid of this Hangerback here and now. Shoot it down. Makes a 1/1, and we'll pass it back. Saga up to 2, Inkmoth Nexus, and they're just going to make a construct. We draw into a swamp, which actually was what I was going to fetch for, so that works out pretty good. This turn, I think I'm just going to play out this Fable, and we'll try to get our Mycotyrant going next turn. Trigger. No good attacks, so we'll pass back. Kind of need to find Goblin Bombardment at this point. All right, there's a construct, untap, Saga up to 3, and they just add a mana. They get an Arcbound Worker. I did not know that was in the deck. Haywire Might. It's going to hit down our Fable, unfortunately. There it goes. It's a Baz, bunch of 1/1s, and a Shadow Spear. 5/5 construct. Attack for 1. We're going on a 15. So as you can see, things got gridlocked on the ground with not much room to attack. Let's fast forward a few turns when the game broke wide open. All right, we draw into a Purphoros, which might be lethal next turn. We're going to move to combat and swing with the team here. I want the opponent to block the Bowmaster, and they don't. Unfortunate. Block the Insect. They're down to 13. Second main. Play out Purphoros. Mycotyrant triggers. Nothing. Back their way. Ballista for 2. That's pretty good. Equip the Collar. And they're going to shoot down Mycotyrant. They gain a life. Draw land. And I think we're moving to combat here. We're just going to attack with the team. Block, block. 4 damage. We're going to pump the team. And do it again. Opponent's down to 6 life. Second main will play out a land. Trigger the Bloodghast. Trigger Purphoros. Put them down to 4. Opponent with Zabaz, Inkmoth, 2/3. I think they're going to be short to make this lethal. Short a red source. Zabaz, destroy an artifact. Modular. Oh, never mind. I misspoke. That will be lethal. We'll scoop it up. Close game. All right. Ragavan not very good in this matchup, so we're going to board out all 4, along with 2 Grists. Bring in some removal. Obviously, you can't keep that. 6 does not have any pressure, but it has a lot of interaction, so I think we're going to keep. And we're going to get rid of Unearth. We're going to start with this Blood Crypt tapped. You'll notice I didn't play out the fetch land, and the reason being is because we want to save these to Descent for potential Mycotyrant later in the game. Okay. Opponent with the Hardened Scales. We're going to hold on to this Explosives until I play out a second 1-drop and then pop and get more value out of it. Second Fable, not bad. And at this point, I am going to play out the Bloodstain. We'll pass back. Opponent with Saga. Triggers. 2 mana for a Ballista. We'll fetch end of turn. Get a Swamp. And we're going to grudge down the Ballista. They shoot us for 2. And back our way. Find a Stomping Ground, play out our Forest, into our Fable, trigger. It's back to the opponent's turn. Saga up to 2. They have 5 cards in hand. Pendelhaven, Cauldron's pretty good. It's going to hit our Grudge, unfortunately. Play as a Baz, maybe it doesn't, we'll see. And they eat the Grudge. Wise. Back our way. Drone to a Stitcher Supplier, Fable's going up to 2. We are going to use it, and I think get rid of the Supplier and the Stomping Ground, looking for more hate. I pretty much find the same exact things. So as much as I want to get rid of this Hardened Scales, I actually think we have to get rid of this Cauldron. So I'm going to start with an attack for 2 here. Trigger the Shaman. No blocks from my opponent. I'm going to lead on this Supplier. Best case scenario, we hit our other Ancient Grudge. And we do. Wow. That is lucky. We're going to grudge down the Cauldron. Play a land. Fetch. Basic Mountain. Explosives for 1. And we're going to pop that right now. It's going to kill our Supplier, but that's quite alright. Back to our opponent. That was an excellent turn. Alright, they add a mana. Get a Haywire Might. They're going to shoot down this Fable. Fable down. 3 cards in hand. Arcbound Ravager. Not too scary as of right now. Draw land. We're going to save that to discard to the Fable. Move to combat. Swing for 2. Make a treasure. Opponent's down to 18. Fable. Pass back. 2 mana for a Hangerback. Combination's a little scary. Untap. Draw another land. We're going to discard both of these. Alright. Best case scenario is we can put a Bloodghast to our graveyard, along with finding a fetch land. Wayfinder trigger. Bloodghast in the graveyard, no fetch land though. We'll play out our Bombardment. We're going to move to combat, swing with both of our creatures, and make 2 treasures. No blocks from our opponent. And I think we're just going to pass it back. If our opponent tries to pump the Hangerback, we're going to shoot it down. Okay, yeah, makes things a little more interesting. Back our way. Fable's going to flip. We find another land. trigger Bloodghast. We're going to start with attacks. I know they have the Pendelhaven. We'll shoot something down in response if they choose to Pendelhaven. Okay, they block one of the goblins. Activate the Hanger back in response. Bombardment, we're going to shoot it down with the Bloodghast. Sacrifice the Walker, put counters on the Ravager. We'll fetch in response. Blood Crypt tapped. It's going to trigger Bloodghast. We're going to shoot down the Ravager. All right, pretty good sequence for us, I'd say. And now that they're tapped down, I think we're actually just going to pass. I almost want to copy the Wayfinder with the Reflection, see if we can find more Bloodghasts. 2 mana from my opponent, Ballista for 1. It's going to be a 2/2. They're going to shoot down the Reflection. And we'll respond, we'll kill the Thopter. They scoop. Going to game 3. And unfortunately, our good fortune ran out. A poor opening 7 led to a mulligan, which couldn't keep up with a fast start from the other side. We used Haywire Might to exile turn 1 Hardened Scales, which didn't phase my adversary, who followed up with Grafdigger's Cage and Arcbound Ravager, which significantly reduced the value of the 2 Bowmasters in my hand. Saga came down on the next turn and produced 2 large constructs, which we could only chump block with the resources we had available. The Saga found a second piece of graveyard hate, which was the nail in our coffin, literally. The undefeated streak came to an end, and now we're 2-1. All right, we are jumping back in. Let's see if we can bounce back. We're on the draw. 7 looks good, we'll keep it. Opponent with a Blood Crypt, Shock, Ragadude, back our way. Find a second Purphoros, not really what we're looking to do here. Oh, I should have started on the Swamp, that was a mistake. Oh, that's a huge mistake. We have to get a Blood Crypt now. I was supposed to play out the Swamp. And our Stitcher Supplier. Trigger, 3 to the graveyard. Opponent with a Swamp and a Bowmaster. They're going to shoot down our Supplier. Trigger, attack for 2. Ragavan's going to hit, connect, and trigger. And they find a Ragavan on the top. Fortunately, they can't use that one. All right, we find our green source. We'll play out Swamp, and I am going to pass the turn. I wonder what we are representing. Opponent moves to combat, attacks with everybody, representing an Undying spell here. We're going to hit the Ragavan with the Bowmaster, and then we're going to chump block the Orc Army. Opponent with Blackleaf Cliffs, coming back our way. Drawn to a Bloodghast, which plays really nice with this Bombardment. But I think we're priced into leading out on the Fable, so we'll start there. We'll get a basic. Fable, trigger, combat, and we'll attack for 1. Opponent's down 17. See if we're getting Furied this turn. Marsh Flats, no attacks, and nothing else. Strange. All right, find a second Fable. We are not going to use Fable's ability. And I think we're just going to attack in with this Goblin Shaman and get our Purphoros into play. And I expect this Bowmaster to be coming back. Shaman, trigger, no blocks. Wow, this is very odd. 4 mana, Purphoros. And I feel pretty advantaged from here. We'll see what happens. Black-Red Scam doesn't have a way to remove Purphoros from the board, so from this point forward, we're off to the races. Fable flips, triggers Purphoros, 2 damage, they're down to 12. Bloodghast, they're down to 10, and now the Ghast has haste. Attack, and I cast my Bowmasters in response to the Undying spell I suspected, and they didn't want to play anymore. Let's go to game 2. I like the 7, we'll keep it. Opponent with Blackleaf Cliffs and a Fury. We don't have the answer for that one, unfortunately. Exile a Bone Crusher. Not dead after all. Fury has returned. Uh-oh. I'm in Truffle. And this is the perfect way to finish this video, because the Fun Police showed up every game for the remainder of this league. A very fitting end, because tomorrow is December 4th, 2023. The date Fury is likely getting banned. So maybe this deck will have a better chance after the sun sets tonight, because everybody knows mushrooms grow best in the dark. Here's to a new, better Modern tomorrow. I will see you all again very soon. Until then, be well, my friend.